So let me now turn to honor Dr. Lan Zhou, and I want to also extend what Dean Gerson mentioned about the professorship of the University Pathologists of Cleveland. As he mentioned, Dr. Michael Lamb, a prior chair of the Department of Pathology here, was instrumental in setting this professorship up. And as Dean Gerson mentioned, it is a legacy of the faculty of University Pathologists of Cleveland, which included both our clinical and basic science faculty. And I can think of no person more fitting for this honor more than Dr. Zhou, who is a physician scientist and really spans the breadth of basic science to clinical research to clinical work in a most amazing way, actually. And in fact, I've often thought that she is a physician scientist of many talents. So let me say a few things about her. First, she's professor of pathology and also our vice chair for research. Her research areas are in hematopoietic biology and disease, notch signaling, GI cancer, and some other cancer-related aspects. She's been funded substantially and over the years by the NIH, a large grant from the American Cancer Society, and other agencies. She's currently the principal investigator on 2 NIH R01 grants, plus a number of other grant roles. And she has done research in the areas that I've already mentioned, but also clinical service and translational research with publications in actually 2 clinical fields, not just research in 1 clinical field, but research in 2 clinical fields, molecular diagnostics and pathology, and transfusion medicine. And I remember a few years ago when I was doing her annual review, and I was looking at the publication she had that year, and I thought, my goodness, she's publishing in basic cancer biology, basic and translational cancer biology, but she's also publishing with our papers with our residents in molecular diagnostics, and she's publishing papers with our trainees in transfusion medicine, a completely different field. So I think she's really, in many ways, a Renaissance physician scientist of many talents. In addition to her roles in the Department of Pathology, she's has had important roles in the Case Comprehensive Cancer Center. She is the scientific director for the Hematopoietic Biorepository and Cellular Therapy Shared Resource. In terms of her service and leadership history, she's also been and continues to be the director of the Molecular Diagnostics Lab, has been in the past director for the UH Molecular Genetics Lab, also in the past the assistant director for the clinical laboratory associated with the National Prion Disease Pathology Surveillance Center, and she's currently serving as the founding CLIA director for the CWRU Advanced Diagnostic Laboratory, and that's actually the program that the university has relied on in recent months to provide the COVID-19 testing for surveillance of students and faculty and staff at our university. So now I'd like to recognize her as our university pathologist, professor of pathology, again, a physician scientist of many talents and most befitting of this professorship as a legacy of all the faculty of this department. Lan, let me turn it over to you. Oh, Lan, you're muted.
Here we go. All right, thank you, Cliff, for very nice, kind words. And I'm deeply honored to be here today to receive this Cleveland Pathologist Professorship. It's a long name. So I know that my friends, my family members are out there watching this live stream event. Although I can't see you, but I really thank you all for being here. And for those who are not familiar with me, I just want to spend a few minutes to share my background and my journey as a physician scientist. So I was born and raised in Shanghai, and I got my medical degree from Shanghai Medical University, which is part of the Fudan University now. And then I came to the US and got my PhD from the molecular and cellular biology program at SUNY Buffalo. From then on, I moved to Ann Arbor, and then I spent 2 years as a postdoc fellow in the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Because my husband, Wei, was matched to the residency program, so I moved with him to Ann Arbor. And after 2 years, I also matched to the residency program in University of Michigan, and I completed my clinical pathology training and followed by a fellowship training in the transfusion medicine. So this picture shows me and my friends in medical school. I was doing research as a PhD candidate, and also my friends in the residency program in Michigan, Ann Arbor. So today I'd like to really dedicate this honor to all of my mentors in my journey as being a physician scientist. So first I'd like to mention Dr. Hui-Li Chen. So my interest in science actually was sparked by his lecture in biochemistry when I was a medical school student. And so after I got my MD degree, I decided to stay as a graduate student in his lab. And Dr. Chen was not only an outstanding lecturer, but he's also an excellent glycobiologist. With his mentorship, I published my first academic paper, science paper, on liver cancer carcinogenesis. And I wanted to dedicate this honor to him, Dr. Chen, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 91 last month in Shanghai. So my PhD study was done in SUNY Buffalo with Bruce Nichols. So I spent 6 years in Bruce's lab, and I thank Bruce for him to giving me lots of independence to develop my own research project studying how SOC regulates connexin 43 gap junction protein. So I remember at probably the third year of my PhD study, Bruce sent me to a Keystone meeting, which was very inspiring. However, I was only operating the projector for other speakers at that meeting. And from then on, I know that I am going to do research and to hopefully one day I can be like other scientists to present my data at the scientific meeting. So as I mentioned, Wei, my husband, was matched to the residency program at the Michigan in 1999. So I moved with him and I started my postdoc training in Zhang Lao's lab because I was interested in studying selectin and selectin ligand interaction and how cells communicated to each other and with the environment. And I'm also interested in the sugar molecule fucose that modifies the selectin ligand interaction. So I noticed that a very unique phenotype in one of the mouse lines with a systemic fucose deficiency developed severe neutrophilia and suppressed T cell development. So John suggests to me that this phenotype may be related to abnormal Notch signaling because Notch is also modified by fucose. And so I delved into the project, and sure enough, we found that the aberrant Notch signaling without fucose modification is responsible for this phenotype, which I continued to do the research along that line after I came to the Case West. And after 2 years as a postdoc fellow, I was matched to the clinical pathology residency program at the Ann Arbor. And I did my CP training, followed with the transfusion medicine fellowship training, as well as molecular pathology training in that program. And I want to thank a group of investigators, clinicians who have national and international reputation in immunohematology, hemostasis, as well as molecular pathology. And I want to thank them for their mentoring, guidance, and encouragement to develop my career goal as a physician scientist. So after I moved to Case Western with John, I started to work in his lab as a part-time physician and a part-time scientist. So we continued the work that I didn't finish during my postdoc training and published my first corresponding author in Blood, studying Notch regulation of granulopoiesis, which led me to the first NIH grant, which is the KOA Mentored Career Development Award. And I want to thank Stan, who graciously agreed to be my KOA mentor after John left the Case Western. And I want to thank Stan also for his insightful guidance and encouragement that led me to expand my research from Notch in granulopoiesis into stem cell, as well as cell therapy. So being a physician scientist, I spend half the time working in a very active research lab, and I want to share with you what we do in the lab. So my lab uses a multidisciplinary approach, including mouse model, genetic mouse models, intravital imaging, single cell transcriptome profiling, as well as clinical research to study how Notch and the ligand interaction maintain stem cell quiescence and niche retention, and how to leverage these findings to improve progenitor and stem cell mobilization and regeneration. So our ultimate goal is to identify effective therapy to improve blood regeneration after chemotherapy and irradiation. The second focus of my lab work is on cancer. So we study GI cancer, particularly colorectal cancer and pancreatic cancer. And we also study how novel biomarkers and the pathways in pancreatic cancer suppress immune response. So our ultimate goal is to leverage those findings to improve cancer therapy by reactivating suppressed immune response and by also overcoming therapy resistance. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of my collaborators at the Case Western, at the Cleveland Clinic, and the UH, who has provided a tremendous support for my research. And I want to thank all my trainees, including students, postdocs, visiting scholars, research associates, for their dedicated hard work, who have contributed to the innovative findings we have made. And for this, I believe this professorship award not only acknowledges the hours of my mentors have invested in me on my journey of a physician scientist, but also recognizing the hours that I have invested in the next generation of researchers, so they can go forward and uphold the legacy of inquiry and curiosity about the human health. And I also want to say a few words about the research support I have received in the past decades. And particularly, I'm deeply grateful to many foundation support and institutional research support I have received from Case Western. And those including the GI Support Program and the Cleveland Digestive Disease Research Core Center, the Velasano Pilot Grants, and the Case Comprehensive Cancer Program Science Pilot Award, and also the Ohio Cancer Research Association Award. And those supports allowed me to explore new front lines in human disease research, including inflammatory bowel disease and gastrointestinal cancers. So as a physician scientist, I always have a keen interest in integrating laboratory diagnosis into better patient care. I have highlighted a few translational and clinical work we have done. And one of my clinical research work is to leverage cell-free genotyping technology to identify pregnancy at high risk of developing hemolytic disease of the fetus and the newborn. And a more recent work I highlight here is we identify as vascular thrombosis and vasculitis in GI tract as poor prognostic markers in team. So it has been very rewarding being able to provide unique insights into what are the clinical relevant questions that need to be addressed as a physician scientist. However, my journey of becoming a physician scientist is not always smooth. And I remember in my first several years after I joined Case Western and UH, it was quite challenging spending half of the time as a physician and a blood bank attending, consulting patients who may need emergent red cell exchange for sickle cell disease, or patients who may need collection of stem cells for transplantation, while spending the other half of the time in the laboratory setting up experiments and collecting data for papers and grant submissions. And I'm deeply grateful for the previous chair, John, and my current chair, Cliff, and for their mentoring, encouragement, and the protected time for me to stay focused on my research. And particularly, I want to thank Cliff for his outstanding leadership and his recognition and advocate for physician scientists. And as you all know, that he has been the director for MSTP program for many years, and he has recruited many physician scientists into the department as well. And I also want to thank the leadership, the Dean Stan and Dr. Simon at the UH and Cliff for their confidence in me to oversee and lead the operation and a quality improvement program in the clinical diagnostic laboratories and the Cancer Center Cellular Therapy Lab, as well as the recently established CLIA Diagnostic Laboratory at the Case Western. And despite all the challenges to balance work as a physician scientist and the family responsibilities, being a physician scientist remains an incredible, rewarding career path. And the ability to combine my clinical pathology and laboratory medicine expertise with curiosity-driven scientific inquiry and the potential to positively influence many lives have tremendously brings tremendous meaning and joy into my daily work. And this professorship, I'm sure, will certainly provide a gateway to more innovative work down the road of this path. So finally, I want to thank my family and who are watching the event right now, my children, my husband, my parents for their unconditional love and support. And I want to thank my sister who has been taking care of my parents and is taking care of my parents right now in the difficult time in Shanghai during the lockdown period of the COVID situation in Shanghai. And particularly, I want to mention Wei, my husband, and want to thank him for his unconditional support and love during the past decades of life, and with his expertise in GI pathology and animal pathophysiology, who has provided tremendous support for all of the research projects I have been doing. So with that, I will stop here and thank you again all for coming and joining me today to receive this professorship.